This is the Crazy Over 40s Live podcast, where every Thursday you will have a pirouette of rotating co-hosts, including myself, Caroline Brown, that will delve into topics relating to the over 40s. Throw away this notion that you're going through a midlife crisis. We're going for a crazy over 40s life. It's the time to uncover and rebirth our adolescent years filled with curiosity and all our desires. We do it right here on the Crazy Over 40s Live podcast. We look into relationships, emotional, sexual, financial wellness, entrepreneurships, providing you with an enjoyable delivery every Thursday. And don't forget to share and subscribe so you can keep updated on all the episodes as and when they become available. I hope you enjoy this episode. The next episode of our Love and Relationship Marathon. As I said, we shall be joined by Dr. Mani Fodorero. She's an award-winning celebrated author, speaker, educator. She has a successful, rewarding 35-year career in education. She shares her truly difficult but inspiring recovery journey with you and how you don't have to repeat family trauma and you can break the cycle. She has done that and she's put it all in her book, God Came to My Garage Sale. So if you're wondering how to get out of a trauma bonding relationship or how to rediscover who you are after a very difficult relationship, which was impacted by intergenerational trauma, then this episode will help you on this recovery. Please join us after the interlude. I'm your host, Caroline Brown. And don't forget to share and subscribe so you can keep updated on all the episodes as and when they become available. Hi, listeners. I have a treat for you today. I have a treat because when we know more about ourselves, it can bring us so much blessings. You know, what more than a treat to understand yourself better? Why not reward yourself for understanding yourself a little bit better and why things continue to happen, even though you know they're getting away with some things, but we still can't stop it. But here, Dr. Mani Hill-Farado is here to tell exactly how we can break intergenerational trauma, at least know more about that when it comes to our families. Hello, Dr. Mani.
Oh, hi. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Oh, you're more than welcome. I mean, what you've accomplished so far, you know, hats off to you, considering your beginnings. And that's what I would like my listeners to know more about. So tell our listeners a little bit more about you and what brought you here on this podcast today.
Well, sure. I'm here to address intergenerational family trauma. And oftentimes we don't really realize that we've experienced this until we've actually gone through some trauma in our adult life. And then you kind of, when you do the deep dive and the inner work into understanding yourself more and
Mm.
understanding what makes you a target for an abuser, or what makes you have weak boundaries, or put up with bad behavior or stay in situations longer than you should. You have to look back at your own intergenerational dynamics with your family of origin and kind of figure out your foundation and how you are wired.
Mm.
So that's what I'm here to discuss, and something that was a journey for me. And I believe that our voices matter, and sharing the steps we took in our journey, the realizations, can help another person. So that's why it's good to have these candid conversations.
It is, and it's more beautiful when we can see examples or hear examples of someone experiencing this and where you are in your life at the moment. People will say you could have been a statistic, couldn't you? Literally. And so,
Most definitely, yes.
yes. And so, if you tell my listeners, you know, as much as you can about what got you to the place where you are now.
Well, sure. I was raised in the suburbs of Chicago, and was definitely a lifelong learner, which has really served me well because, with more and more that happens that you uncover in your life, it's good to investigate it and look into it. But I went off to college. I became a teacher. I just retired from a wonderful 35-year career as a high school special education teacher, and 12 of those years I was a university graduate school adjunct professor. But I was like checking off all the boxes to live my American dream. Get married, have 2.5 children, live in a gorgeous home, have a successful career, have fulfilling hobbies. I was going along thinking things were fine, but in reality, I was ignoring a lot of red flags in my marriage. My values of honesty and love and fidelity and family were not the same values of who I was married to. So I made a very tough but very courageous decision to file for divorce after 27 years of marriage. And there was a defining moment where, my light bulb was clearly illuminated that, I was really dealing with a malevolent individual for many, many years. And I was just ignoring it because I didn't want to face the truth. And I had, at that time, two adult children. I
Mm.
didn't want to upset their, stability and their view of what family was. I worked so hard to create such a happy home and environment for them. Um, but when you leave a predator, you are a prey, and the abuse really ramps up. That can be actually a very dangerous time when you mentioned, talking about not wanting to be a statistic. Unfortunately, we read about too many people that do not, survive these ordeals because of the malevolence, the intention to harm by one party. And
Mm.
and I was dealing with that. And actually, even close to a decade after filing for divorce, I'm still dealing with the fallout.
Okay.
Because these individuals have a public persona. They wear a false mask. They portray themselves as very upstanding when behind closed doors, that's not really the case. And so, my world kind of came to a crashing halt. And what even made it worse was I lost my two beautiful adult children to parental alienation, where they align with the alienator, with the abuser, all based on a false narrative, lies, half truths, whatever. They have allegiance, to that person, because their love is not unconditional like the loving parent. And so I've had to navigate extreme trauma, with not only having losing everything, my home, my money, my assets, my support system of friends, family, neighbors, which I thought would always be there for me. I lost my two adult children, which is just mind blowing for any, loving parent. So I needed to do the deep work to understand, why do bad things happen to good people? And that led me on my journey to this self-realization that, there are people that are malevolent, that harm people. There are people that don't have your same values, and you need to make some changes and put up some healthy boundaries, but also do the inner work to realize your intergenerational family trauma.
Mm. So you're very much talking about coming from a place where you exposed or inherited some of the difficult patterns that can become very challenging, no fault of your own, but also talking about the books that can possibly help those who are trying to get their head around some of the things that you just described. And if I just can talk about that a little bit, because you've named your titles True Deceit, False Love, which obviously it says here addresses violence, domestic violence, and you talked about wearing a mask and how your abusers can come up with a persona for one person or two or three or four or five, a whole group of people, and then behind closed doors, they're very much the person who've come to harm you.
Most definitely. And, it definitely happens in marriages or partnerships. It's not always gender specific at all. But,
Right.
this malevolence can also come in the form of a best friend that you've been trauma bonded with for years, even longer than your partner. It can come in the form of various family members that, you have kept a relationship with because society has ingrained in you that family is everything, and even if you're treated bad, you stay by the side of your siblings, your parents, your
Mm.
cousins, your aunts and uncles. And when really, when you step back, you might realize that there are a number of people that um are malevolent. And actually, because of a smear campaign, which is very common, where you have your neighbors, your friends, your family, your coworkers, they've been told false information about you by the abuser, just to kind of gain their allegiance. And then when you need your support system, which you think is there, they are not there. And so sometimes, people will say, well, I don't want to get involved. I want to remain neutral. I'm not taking a side. You're not asking anyone to take a side, but their silence really speaks volumes, in that they are really aligning with the abuser if
Mm.
they have decided to cut off a relationship with you because of some false information that they've heard. And you really learn the true colors of people. You really learn who your real support system is, and who isn't. And so your circle gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And you mentioned my books, True Deceit, False Love. It's a 5-book series. I am bringing awareness to domestic violence, to narcissistic abuse, to parental alienation, and then, of course, interweaving intergenerational family trauma into the mix, because the self reflection piece is very important. But I also, I feel that knowledge is power, that we need to, when we're going through these things, find out a little bit more about these dynamics, or about these personality disordered individuals. Of course, they're all undiagnosed. They don't think anything's wrong with them. They don't do the inner reflection. It's the empathetic, loving people that want to try to come to some understanding of what they've been through. They are the ones that do that self reflection work. But my 5-book series, True Deceit, False Love, is a very unique set of books, to provide support and resources for anyone who might feel that they are experiencing some of this kind of relationship trauma. And, the first book in the series really just came about because I was looking into terms and phrases that, were used in the literature, in on podcasts, you know, um, in books, that I didn't understand. I really didn't even understand what narcissism was, or what flying monkeys were, or what word salad is, or gaslighting, which is a big one. Um,
Can you?
gas. Go ahead.
No, you were just about to explain. Can you tell me what some of those words mean?
Yes, of course. Well, gaslighting is such a big one, and it's taken from the 1944 movie Gaslighting, where, a perpetrator, a spouse, is slowly trying to make the other spouse go crazy, and not, and question their abilities, and their what they see and what they hear. So abusers will gaslight you to get you dependent on them, and to make you question your choices, and even your worth. So this can happen to extremely intelligent, accomplished individuals that start out very, confident and secure in who they are, but little by little their self-worth is eroded with very manipulative strategies, very covert, underhanded, um, actions. that get you to even isolate yourself from people that really could be very positive influences in your life. So that is gaslighting. And word salad is something that these abusers use. They will talk from all different angles and get you so confused that you are just like, okay, enough already, or you just sort of go numb and you don't take it the next step to really understand because you're exhausted. These abusers will wear you out. um, and so that there are so many terms. In fact, in my first book, Carolyn, there are 15,555 terms and phrases on this. So,
Goodness.
it would take a long time to go through all of these terms, and I purposely don't put definitions because there are varying views and definitions for the terminology, and I just find so much value in doing the research yourself, looking at a term and then connecting the dots as you research to your own experience and then making that definition personal to you so that you really know what you are going through. So the first book is terminology, and it's very important. I think the language helps us, make sense of some things. And I've always been a lover of words and communication and that. So it was very natural for me. I mean, after I got to over 15,000 terms and phrases, I just said, wow, I need to, if this is helping me, I want to put it into a book, which I did. And then
Okay.
I took those terms and phrases with the next book to do acrostic poetry that was informational from many different points of view. So, not necessarily, autobiographical by any means. It was just, and actually, so many of people's experiences are so very similar when they're dealing with toxic people.
Because talking about that, you'll find that people who have faced trauma or experienced trauma, whether it's first hand, second hand, third hand, you will see that, people would observe or experience or been on the other side of destructive habits and patterns and, impulse responses that they may have. How do they get in the way of you forming healthy relationships?
Wow, what a wonderful question. And you bring up such a very good point because people do tend to get defensive and react because they're emotional and they're defending themselves. They're saying, no, that isn't true, or this is really how it is. And what I have learned is we have to get away from reacting and instead responding with some mindful and very thoughtful responses. And sometimes our responses are no response at all. Sometimes our silence will speak volumes because we're not engaging in the antagonistic chaos that narcissistic abusers want to keep you, you know, engaged in. And
Right.
sometimes you need to be strong enough to look at the situation for what it is and walk away
Mm.
and put up some healthy boundaries and try to, you know uh let yourself give yourself permission that you don't have to have the kind of closure that you want to have, that you think is reasonable, because sometimes no closure is the closure. So we need to take time to reflect and think about what is presented before us, and respond. And that response could also be not responding, but certainly getting away from reacting. And because abusers want you to, toxic family members, they want they're trying to bait you. They want you to
Mhm.
get that emotional reaction and lash back out at them, when really that is not a very healthy way to respond, especially to very malevolent individuals with, who have different agendas than what you do. You need to remove yourself from these people. And sometimes it is so extremely painful to realize someone that has been in your life for many years is really playing this toxic, you know, game with you. And at some point, people need to realize, hey, I don't want to get involved in this anymore. I'm going to step back.
And step back. And now, one of the things that you did mention is relationships just now, and that those who are unfortunately at the hands of those who are controlling, being coercive, um, being physically and emotionally, financially abusive, will somehow not know how to let go of relationships like that. In fact, many actually enter into more abusive relationships after the other. And so ignoring the warning signs that something isn't right, not listening to your gut, is something that they've been told to kind of shut off. Um, how do you regain that? How do you regain the trust in yourself that you are going to make the right choices and to kind of switch on the things that are helpful, such as the warning signs that something isn't right, listening to your gut?
Well, another great question. And my response would be do some research, because there are many people that somehow get the courage to leave an abusive relationship with a narcissistic, manipulator. And then sometimes they are just discarded for, new supply, a new shiny object, whatever. But they're left reeling from the after effects of this relationship. And, many people jump from that situation to yet another situation that is very similar, because of the love bombing. That, they're emotionally needy. They want to believe in goodness still. They want to have, a positive relationship. And so they're almost prime when you are someone who has, gone through loss and hurt and betrayal and deceit. You are almost prime for the next abuser to come and pick up where the last one left off. So you do need to be aware. And, you were asking me, how do you become aware? I
Mhm.
think you need to really look into what red flags are out there and really connect the dots. It takes a little bit of research and reflection. And then you also mentioned following your gut intuition. Your If something doesn't feel right, it really probably isn't right, and you should honor those feelings. So many times we've been conditioned to ignore them and just say, well, they didn't mean it, it'll get better. They promised this, with all that kind of future faking. So I really think other than just trying to follow your gut intuition, you need to do some research on red flags and understand these personality disordered types, people that are out to harm. You have to understand that, and then you'll see that they all kind of follow by the same playbook. What you are experiencing with this new person is very much what you experienced before, and you can exit easier, have a better escape plan before you get even more and more involved.
Mm, yeah, most definitely. I mean, it can be quite difficult, considering sometimes, your sense of self of is eroded and diminished for being in that relationship, isn't it? And when we know in a healthy relationship, I would say to those out there exactly what you said. You must meet your own needs and not let others determine, things for you. Um, your thoughts and feelings and needs and concerns, your boundaries are there for you to protect yourself first and foremost. Don't be afraid to offend, because that's the other thing that I know that some women and men too are conscious of, the fact that they are afraid of offending. So, taking back, some of these things that are very important to you, like you talk about values like self-respect, honesty, integrity, honoring yourself first and foremost. If you had to sum up what is intergenerational trauma, what would you say? And tell us a little bit more about, what you can offer to some of my listeners or anyone out there who's looking for the first step to seek support.
Well, sure. Intergenerational family trauma really is your foundation, your experiences where you witnessed abuse, coercive control, manipulation, you know, you witnessed false love and true deceit. Yet you buried it, because as a good, loving, empathetic person, you'd like to see that other people you surround yourself with, especially family or close friends, would have those same values, but not everyone does. And so what happens is it's a pattern that seems to go from generation to generation. If you were raised by a narcissistic parent, and that can play out in many different ways. There's a very good chance that, you know, you have picked up some of these tendencies or suppressed your own goodness, just to survive. So it's a pattern situation, and lots of times our light bulbs don't go on until we're experiencing it with our own families when we have kids, and then or when we are in a relationship, and then the negative perpetrator is kind of exposes themselves for who they really are. That's when we kind of go back and we kind of connect the dots. That's why there's so many people in midlife and beyond that are finally saying, wow, I really experienced some intergenerational family trauma, and how can I break this pattern? And I believe it has to be a conscious effort. And I think our voices matter. People, even just people that are tuning into this conversation, might come away with one or two nuggets of information to give them the strength to start, looking at their situation. But I think it does come down to, breaking the pattern of always seeking that external validation from everyone else. Like you were saying, afraid you don't want to offend another person. We have to really put those positive values onto ourselves first. You hear that expression, put your oxygen mask on first and then help the person next to you. And if our teacup is not full, but so it's empty, and we are giving, 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 we are depleting more and more of ourselves and losing part of who we are. We need to make sure that our teacup is full, and then so when we can reach out to others, we're not completely depleting ourselves. So we need to honor ourselves, and it's not a selfish thing. We've just been conditioned to always think of others before ourselves, and now we have to realize that, we can strike a better balance with that, and really take care of ourselves, because we are the only ones that really will take care of ourselves. We have only ourselves to depend on. And on this earthly plane, I mean, depending on your belief system, you can feel that you have support from divine. Um, but you need to maybe revisit that. And talking about revisiting, revisit your passions. If you really enjoyed certain activities, but you put them on the back burner for whatever reason, many times for years and years. Revisit those interests to see if you still, if that still is something that brings you joy and happiness. And some people need to, find new hobbies and new areas of focus to bring them joy and help, them to self actualize. Sometimes a move is good. Sometimes, like I actually, after I retired from teaching and I lost everything, including my adult children. Like I said, I made a very big decision, and I moved from the Chicago, Illinois, Midwest, USA area where I had lived a lifetime out to the Caribbean. So the last 3 years, I've been living in the beautiful rainforest of the Virgin Islands, where I am just immersed in nature and, just really am appreciating all sorts of things. I loved to garden back when I was in Chicago, and I know in England, gardening is a big passion for so many people. But I have taken that to a different level here in the Caribbean and I didn't do it right away. Actually, it took a couple years being here for me to really revisit that passion. And now I'm actually not only gardening, because I enjoy it, I'm gardening because that's where I want to sort of live off the land and be more self-sustainable. And so I have like an additional purpose to 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 my passions and interests. So I would say, revisit who you are, pay attention to your gut feelings, and do the research to realize that you don't want to get yourself back into the same patterns, that it's okay to stop and pause and reflect. You don't need to come up with a reaction right away to anything. Give yourself that permission to really be more mindful in your responses.
Well said. Where can my listeners get hold of you and the sort of work that you're doing to look forward to so they can keep ahead of what you've been up to and what you plan to be doing in the future?
Well, sure. I am not on social media, but I do have a website, which is the title of my spiritual fiction. So my website is www.godcametomygaragesale.com. And there you can find out about me. You can find out about my spiritual fiction, God Came to My Garage Sale, which is a book club favorite, and an easy read. And it was endorsed by James Redfield, who wrote the Celestine Prophecy, and it's won many awards. It might even be a
Nice.
movie. Um,
Wonderful.
and then the other books, the 5-book series, True Deceit, False Love, all of my books can be found on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. My publisher is Balboa Press, which is a division of Hay House. And then I also have 6 other books that I have co-authored that you can find all of that on my website. And then I have a happenings section that I keep up to date with podcast interviews, book signings, speaking engagements, different magazine articles I've contributed to. And actually, at that section, I do highlight other people and their work. So it's actually kind of a resource, not just about what I'm doing, about, some other people. So that if people are interested in learning about how to deal with these things, they can actually learn a lot just by going to my website.
Wonderful. Any parting words for my listeners?
My parting words would be, we all have challenges in life, and, yours may not be intergenerational family trauma or parental alienation. Your challenge might be something totally different, with regards to your health, your family, your job, your living situation. We all have challenges in our life, but we can choose how to respond to these challenges and stay true to our integrity and our values.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Marnie, for coming on the Praise Over 45 podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I just think it's amazing what you are doing. Your audience is very lucky to be able to connect with you, and
Thank
it's just
you.
been an honor. So thank you very much.
You're more than welcome. Thank you. Oh, did Dr. Marnie give me my flowers? I accept. Thank you so much, Dr. Marnie. Right, you can get hold of any of my guest episodes on the crazeover45.com website and all my social media handles. Attracting love in your over 40s, how easy has it been for you? Well, I'm still looking. Macy Matarazzo is a dating and love and relationship expert, and she's sharing all about her loved up program, her super loved up program. She shall be here on the next episode, which is tomorrow on the Crazy Over 40s Live podcast. Remember, it's a love marathon. Don't forget to share and subscribe so you can keep updated on all the episodes as and when they become available. And I'm your host, Caroline Brown.